All right. We want to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this fee estimate webinar. As you get settled, a few housekeeping reminders before we get started. Please use the Q&A section for any questions today, and remember to be constructive in any of those questions or comments to the presenters and to one another to ensure that we have a session that is productive. Also, AIA California will submit one AIA Learning Unit for those who complete the session live. And as always, the webinar content and additional resources will be available online shortly after the session. Today's webinar, which will discuss mastering fees and how to better understand what they mean for your bottom line, is brought to you by BQE. It qualifies for one AIA Learning Unit for those who watch live, which AIA California will report for you once you have finished the session in full. Now to introduce our presenter. Douglas Teager, FAIA, graduated from Cornell University in 1982 with a B. Arc. He opened his own firm in 1989 and grew from a solo practitioner to become managing partner of his 32-person firm. In 2009, Douglas received his master's in spiritual psychology from USM, where he learned tools and skills he is sharing with his staff and clients. His ability to effectively streamline the operations allowed for more time to be spent on design and project research while creating a culture that fosters a holistic approach to a work-life balance. In 2017, he served as president of the AIA Los Angeles chapter and previously served on the AIA National Strategic Council. In 2019, Douglas transitioned out of his firm, elevating 3 associates to partners, sold his shares, and started his next venture, Teager Consulting. Douglas's mission is to live an inspiring and balanced life, whether it involves family, coaching, consulting, painting, or sports. Now, on to today's presentation. Welcome, Douglas. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Rebecca. Thank you. And I'm going to stop the video and share the presentation. This is one of my favorite presentations. So let's stop this and let's go into here. And Rebecca, if you can just see if we're seeing the correct screen.
That looks perfect.
Okay, great. So once again, thank you to the AIA California. Thank you to BQE Core for making these webinars possible, for sponsoring this. To keep the intro even shorter, you can just go to my website, douglasteager.com, to read about my background and personal journey. As Rebecca said, I've been managing partner for 20 years, developing best practices, and now I'm consulting and sharing this information, assisting firms to increase profitability and improve firm culture. I like to say we're partnering together to make a difference through defining and achieving your business and personal goals. I always like to mention books, and there's so many great books and resources available for running a firm and your life. My good friend Steve Burns is creating a company called The Well-Designed Firm, and I love the premise of this. You guys design buildings, beautiful buildings. You design projects, you plan for it, you lay it out, you conceptualize. Let's do the same thing for your firm. Let's design your firm. So there's a couple great books out. One is Traction. Traction is foundational of how to run a company. It really touches on all the aspects that are so important. Another one is Architect's Guide to Fee Bidding. So although this book is 20 years old, many of the topics are what I'm covering today, and it goes into greater detail if you're interested. What I care about most with all my clients is creating systems and processes that can simplify how you do what you do. As long as you have a logic to it, I'll buy into it. I would offer that if there's any part of what you learned today to just take and implement, that's the benefit. You don't have to use everything, but if there's certain aspects that resonate with you, let's keep them and improve on them. And small micro changes is what's going to cause dramatic impact over time. There's another great book, James Clear, Atomic Habits, that has a really good diagram that shows just these micro changes can make huge impacts. So while I offer a 12-part masterclass series, today we're on understanding fees. This is one of the most popular webinars, and I hope you guys will enjoy and get something out of it. So I get asked the question all the time, how do you come up with your fees? While the AIA has an antitrust rule that prevents architects from sharing the fees they charge, I want to share the concept of understanding how to calculate the hours associated with whatever fee you choose to charge. You can Google AIA's antitrust compliance and read about all the information and more about these issues. So my intention here is not to tell you what to charge, but to paint a picture for you to understand if you can make a profit based on what you are charging, and then how to manage that fee over the duration of the project. And it's okay to raise your fees from what you are currently charging if you're not making money. Time management and time tracking is an important key. It's really the main premise of understanding if we are making a profit, you have to understand how much time you're putting into the project. Then understanding your pay rate, your cost rate, and your bill rate is another key towards understanding profitability. These are both on previous webinars. Last, a clean chart of accounts allows you to analyze your firm's financial information easily. The Excel spreadsheet I'm going to review with you on the next slide is a complete project management tool that is used both to develop the fee used in your proposal, as well as an hour tracking system to assist in keeping your projects profitable. Understanding fees first starts with a clear definition of the project scope. Your proposal should be written in a way to prevent scope creep. We go over proposal writing in a future webinar. Next, it's important to create a rough order of magnitude of the construction cost. This is your professional opinion based on the history of building similar projects or discussions with quality contractors who have built similar projects in similar locations. This is an internal facing number that is used for you to have an accurate understanding of what your fee would be based on our percentage of a realistic construction cost. We all know so many clients think they can do it for less and all of that. So I create an internal structure that allows me to analyze based on what I think it's going to cost. I can share with the owner, my intention is to build towards your goal, but if it's unrealistic, I like to state that. So I always like to start with a realistic construction cost. Now there's a great, you have to be very good on selling because I don't want to have you scare away the clients, but you have to be realistic. I always break out construction administration as a separate line item. And I really like to charge hourly for this service as there are so many unknowns before you even started the project. You don't know if it's going to be a challenging client, a challenging contractor from day one. So why lock into a fixed fee when all of this is really outside of your control? Then I like to break down the fee per phase. This is based on your knowledge of the percentage of time you spend in each phase. This ties back to our time tracking system, and really you need a firm management time tracking software to make this feasible and really possible. Your fee outline also should match your proposal outline, and this we'll talk about in a little bit. So I know this is a small image. We'll zoom in and see the details, but in this one spreadsheet, we at the very top, define the scope. B, which is the blue area, we create a rough order of magnitude of construction cost. C, we estimate fees based on a percentage of construction cost. D, we estimate construction administration on an hourly basis. We break down the fee by percent per phase and see the associated hours per phase. And then F, we schedule by percent complete per phase. And last G, we understand how many hours per phase are allocated for each person working on the team. In essence, at the top, we go with a top-down understanding of the hours, and the bottom gives us a bottom-up understanding of the hours. I need to stress that you only modify the yellow cells. All other cells are reference or have formulas that auto-calculate. I'm going to mention this a few times because I can't tell you how many calls I get. The formulas aren't working and people overwrote cells that have formulas in them. So only modify the yellow cells. The spreadsheet is not locked, so you can add lines to break down how you want to calculate your project scope. In this example, line 1 defines all your habitable space measured to exterior of walls. Some of my architectural clients use this same spreadsheet and add multiple lines to define the area for first floor, second floor, basement, etc. However you want to use this spreadsheet as a starting point to reflect how you work as your firm, these spreadsheets are meant to be customized for how you work. What I care about in this exercise is to understand the total building square footage and have a realistic associated cost per square foot. This brings up a whole other discussion of what's an accurate cost per square foot for construction. The cost per square foot varies depending on where you're located in the country, the contractor, and the quality level of construction, the quality of the materials used, local building code requirements, and a host of other reasons. As an architect, you need to have a realistic understanding for what your type of project will cost. I am only using $500 a square foot as an example for a quality home in the Los Angeles market, but understand, homes in Los Angeles and other places can range from lower than $500 a square foot to well above $1,000 or even $1,500 a square foot. Well, this is a huge range. It's up to you to understand the client's expectation of both quality and cost and time related to their specific project. Understanding and meeting or exceeding clients' expectations is critical to client referrals and the resulting firm growth for a job well done. So continuing to line 2, I like to define other construction areas such as outdoor patios, covered trellises, second floor decks, roof decks, or other design items that have an associated construction cost that is typically different than the cost of construction for the main house. These outdoor areas can vary widely on what their cost per square foot would be. And you can insert lines and break down the square footage and related cost per square foot as necessary. This is for you to understand what's typically not considered in the budget or in square footage, but it really takes time to design these areas. So put in a number, put in a calculation, and understand what is the realistic total budget for this project. Line 3 takes into account and allows you to add other line items. Line 4, exterior hardscape. I typically put this in as an estimated lump sum, and you can see where the yellow is in a different area. I would only include this if this is something you are designing and not outsourcing to a landscape architect or some other design professional. Line 5 allows you to add other items that are usually covered in as a lump sum cost. For example, line 6, the pool is defined as an estimated cost, but I do not use this in determining the architect's responsibility of construction budget because typically we have outsourced this to a pool designer and a separate pool contractor. We just show the rectangle that I don't charge for showing the rectangle. And then line 7, are there any other lump sum costs, not part of the fee, but included to understand the total project construction cost? Line 8 is the estimated construction cost. This is based on your experience working with local contractors you're comfortable with that could deliver this project within this budget. Quite often, the client's initial expectations are different than your estimate of construction costs. And it is up to you as an architect who understands client nurturing, education, and development to have a game plan and a system and a story to educate clients about construction costs. A simple analogy I use is car shopping. If someone took you to look at Kias, Chevrolets, and Fords versus Mercedes-Benz or BMWs versus Ferraris, Lamborghinis, or Bentleys, you might have a better understanding of cost. Your job as an architect is not to tell the client what the house is going to cost until you know what quality level of house or car the client is expecting. Taking a tour of existing homes and sharing that this house was built for this cost per square foot in this year helps provide a framework for the client to understand realistic construction costs. Now that we have defined the project scope with a rough order of magnitude of costs, we can use a percentage of construction budget as one guideline or data point to experiment with the dollar amount of the architectural fees. I use the concept of data points in all my areas of coaching. I like to have as many different data points as possible when looking at any issue. For example, we're trying to determine the right fee to win this project. The data points could be understanding the client's expectation, knowing the local construction market and understanding realistic construction costs, knowing who you're competing with for this project. Is this a portfolio project, or is there some other reason you're willing to make a smaller profit? What is the fee based on a percentage of construction costs? And is this percentage reasonable for this market sector? What are the associated hours that this fee provides? And can you complete the project in that amount of hours based on past projects that you kept accurate time tracking on? What are the number of hours it took to complete a similar project in the past? Do you have the staff to take on this project and meet the client's schedule? Do you have the experience to take on this project? Or is there a discount you're giving to learn on this project? And most important, what does your gut say? Are there any red flags so far? Oh, sorry about that. Okay. So I have two versions of this spreadsheet, depending on how you structure your proposal. And these are available on my website, douglassteger.com, under store. You can customize these spreadsheets to match your proposal template. You might have 2, 3, or 4 versions depending on the project type. The version on the left is based on a traditional 6-phase architectural proposal. When you have established a name for your firm, it's easier to justify this type of lump sum fee. For firms that have resistance with a large lump sum approach, an alternate approach is to offer a proposal with levels of service that allows the client to select what they want included pending their budget or need. This is also effective when the client shops the fee with other firms. They can have a better understanding of what's included or excluded in the associated cost. For example, on the right, phases 1 through 3 represent a permit set of drawings. This is the minimum amount of drawing that allows you to secure a building permit. It's very important to know your cost of what it takes to complete a basic permit set and still make a profit. This is your bottom line. If you take it for less, you know you will not be profitable. I use the word permit set versus builder set for a very important reason. A builder set leaves room for interpretation. A contractor could say, I need more information or more details. The owner would say, hey, you didn't give me a full set. You didn't give me a builder set. He can't build from it. With the term permit set, you have met your contractual obligation when you secure a building permit. We'll get more into this in the proposal writing webinar. Once again, there is never one size fits all in this profession. It's up to you to define your style, your way of selling, your systems and processes that makes your firm successful. Use these webinars as a guideline to help you put systems in place, but the systems have to reflect your mission, vision, and values within your own firm. The concept is the same no matter which version of this spreadsheet you're using. So let's jump in and understand the logic of this system. Some of you might have heard the concept of top-down versus bottom-up fee generation approaches. Here, we're starting with a top-down approach. We're looking at the overall fee based on a percentage of construction. At the end, we'll go into a bottom-up analysis, which looks at what is the team size working on this project, and what are the hours needed for them to complete each phase. Again, this is an example of using multiple data sets, top-down versus bottom-up. We can even get more granular on a bottom-up approach and create a task list and associated hours for every task associated with every phase for each person. I personally do not get this granular for most projects, but some of our corporate clients required a work plan with associated hours. Once again, a reminder, only modify what's in yellow. All other cells are formulas. Here, line 1 is if you're using a pre-designed phase. If not, just enter 0. In the proposal webinar, we'll talk about the benefit of a pre-designed phase or feasibility study prior to a full contract for certain clients and certain projects. It's a great way to getting paid to do your proposal, developing trust with the client, knowing if it's a good fit with each of you before you're all in on the full contract. I like to play with the percentages in yellow to get close to the dollar fee amount appropriate for this type of project. The middle column shows the fee as a cost per square foot. There are some firms that base their fee on a fixed cost per square foot as opposed to a percentage, and this can be a good cross-reference. Line 2 includes all phases up to start of construction administration. Once again, I highly recommend separating the fee construction administration from the other phases and trying to charge hourly for CA. Option B would look like this, with line 2 representing the permit set scope of work and lines 3 to 7 reflecting all other services the client can see or decline. This is an internal facing document. This is not what you show the client, although some of my architectural clients have modified it to make it work so you can show a client, but this is an internal thinking document. I like to say my Excel spreadsheets are scratch pads to think through what if scenarios. I want to make it clear. I'm not saying this is what you should charge for a permit set scope of work or any other service. Each of you needs to review your past projects, keep accurate time records for past projects by phase and activity, and use that information as another data set to understand what it takes for you to actually budget a project. This example shows that if the permit set is a 5% fee based on a 5,000 square foot home at roughly $2.8 million construction budget, then the associated fee with that percentage of construction would be $140,000. You might be thinking, I can complete that permit set for $70,000 and still make money. I say, great, that's another data point. Only you can determine how long it takes for you to perform any of these services. My intention is to have you think through the process and then track the progress through the life of the project and to maintain a healthy profit. Line 3 is permit services, which we'll talk again in the proposal webinar. For cities like Los Angeles or Santa Monica or other locations where governmental approvals are challenging, I suggest to separate the permit phase into 2 parts. The first is what a permit expediter would do, and most permit expediters charge hourly. This includes filling out the applications, filing the plans, meeting with the governmental agencies, securing approvals and clearances, and anything else required to secure a permit. Everything a permit expediter does. The second part, what is shown here as part of the fixed fee. So assembling all the documents required for the permit expediter to perform the services. This might include 1 or 2 meetings with the building department plan checker for final approval. The details are for you to define in your proposal. Any responses, this is really important. Any responses to plan check comments are included in your construction document phase and fee. As an architect, you're responsible to provide a set of drawings that can secure a building permit, and therefore modifications or revisions to the CD set is not allocated to the permit phase. The permit phase is just what it takes to get the permit, anything an expediter would do. I like to break this out as its own phase. A lot of architects I know blend the permit and CD phase together. I'd highly recommend to shift to a separate phase. On a tangent, look how I chose my words when defining respond to plan check comments. When you enter your time slips, I suggest to be positive and or neutral with all your descriptions. There is a difference between a description that states drawing revisions due to plan check corrections versus responding to plan check comments. While this is a small distinction, I think it's very important to train your staff and yourself to write your time card descriptions as if a lawyer is reading them. This applies to hourly contracts where a client might see the descriptions. To be safe, always being in the habit of writing your descriptions with a mindset of describing solutions, not problems. Line 4 is the bidding phase, and I suggest in your proposal you limit the number of contractors you bid with in your proposal. I had one client early in my career that requested we go out to 3 new bidders 3 separate times when the project did not meet their expectation of cost. 9 bidders, 3 separate rounds. I burnt some bridges, learned a few valuable lessons here. Many architects just lump the bidding service in with the CD phase, but it takes time to write a good set of bid instructions, meet the contractors at the site for a project walkthrough, respond to RFIs, review 3 bids, match them apples to apples, ask for contractor clarifications of what's in this line item or that line item, meet with the owner to review the numbers, and then meet again with the owner and each of the contractors for a final interview before a final selection. I'm just describing that takes time. So I typically see this as a lost revenue for many of my clients. When this option B, having a breakdown of services, it is the owner's choice to hire you or not for these services. If they don't select this service in your original proposal and they start to ask for your assistance, your response is simple. My pleasure. We can work hourly to assist you or per original contract amount. Which would you prefer? Line 5 is CA, Construction Administration. You will notice this is not yellow, and I have a separate calculation below in the dark blue area to understand the appropriate time and related cost for this phase. Line 9 defines the estimated duration of CA. This also ties to your proposal as the length of construction is typically called out, as the length of construction is typically out of the architect's control, as long as we are not the cause of that delay. So here, let's assume an 18-month construction schedule. Lines 10 and 11 break this down into weeks of construction using the average of 4.3 weeks to a month. 52 divided by 12 is 4.3. Line 12 is for you to enter the average number of staff hours per week you anticipate for this project. This is dependent on your past experience based on what level of CA you typically provide. Line 13 is the bill rate of the person providing CA, or a blended bill rate if you have more than one person on CA. Line 14 is the total, which is usually more than most clients want to pay, but reflects the danger of a low fixed fee for CA when you truly know what it takes based on historical data. Then line 15 breaks down this to cost per month, which might be easier for the client to accept rather than a total. Only you know the time you typically spend during CA. So going back up to line 6, I list an architectural detailing phase. This is used when you're differentiating a permit set from a full service fee. You need to be clear in your proposal what this includes, such as this additional architectural detailing could include specific door and window details and specifications, wall sections, additional building sections, soffit plan, HVAC diagram, reflected ceiling plan, furniture plan, finished material plan, hardscape plan, landscape diagram, detailed door and window schedule, separate dimension plan, foundation plan, all these other additional services that most architects just give away if they do a full permit set, but they're competing to have their cost driven down. So understand what your minimum is for a permit set, and then list another phase, architectural detailing phase, and define what's included in that, give a number for what that was going to cost, and then the owner can either accept it or not. But don't just give these services away because you think you're doing a good deed for the client. It's going to make profitability more challenging. Likewise, line 7, interior architecture services is different than interior design and could include such items as kitchen elevations and details, bathroom elevations and details, closet elevations and details, fireplace elevations and details, molding specs, base crown, wanes, lighting wiring plan, lighting specs, custom cabinet details. Even with interior architectural services, I exclude shopping and sourcing for materials or products. This is typically done by an interior designer or hourly by you. So once again, defining what is included in each phase, giving a fair number for delivering that service. This really only applies to architects that are competing on a very tight fee proposal with other firms. If you're a branded firm that can get 10, 15, 20% for your projects, you don't have to break it down like this because you're going to get the fee that can justify it. But most firms struggle with competing against other people that are less, and they're less because they're not offering all these services. Some of you out there want to do a fantastic job and you just provide all this information on your set, but it makes it hard to be profitable. Line 8 is a summary reflecting the total architectural fee as a percentage of construction costs, and then the total associated fees. So now let's focus on the brown box. There's a lot of information, so let's review column by column. Column A defines the 8-phase proposal I'm using for this example, and column B is the phase description. Column C allows you to break down the percentages in yellow per your own experience. This ties back to the importance of accurate time tracking to know what this percent breakdown should look like. Since other phases 4 through 8 are standalone, they're all showing either 100% or 0. The client can then select or decline these in the proposal. I use 100% to understand what the total fee would be as a percentage, as shown in line 8, column C. If we use the full service proposal, the breakdown would look like this. Here, we see the breakdown of percentages is by phase because this is a full service proposal as opposed to a permit set with optional services the owner can choose. Even here, I want you to understand my choice of words. Optional services the owner can choose versus add-ons the owner can accept or additional services. These have very different emotional charges, but they both say the same thing. A takeaway for today: start being aware of the words you use to communicate. How you say what you want to communicate is a critical emotional intelligence awareness. Once again, the energy of your words can have as much meaning as the words themselves, and the words you choose combined with a neutral energy, a loving energy, can really help communicate and get you what you want. In this example, the client is signing off on a total lump sum contract of $312,270 versus the $274,743 reduced budget I use for internal metrics. Once again, if you download the spreadsheet, you can modify it to make it work for your specific firm. If you want to join one of my monthly group classes, we go over things like this, and other firm owners share how they have been using it. I like to create a reduced budget, which is basically a contingency. So what's on the contract is $312, but I put in a 10 or 15% reduction that allows me to have an internal metric that if I can complete it in this amount, I make extra profit. But if I don't, I have an extra 10% of time to try to wrap it up. So using a 10 or 15% reduction allows for a contingency. If you don't finish these within the established budget amount, you have a chance to finish within the contract amount. I won't get into the psychology of this, but many of us have challenges completing work on time and budget, and this might help meeting budgets. If you don't use it, then just enter 0. In general, all the ideas I'm presenting are to be tested by you as experiments. If they work, use them. If they don't, modify them or toss them out and find something else. The highlighted green box at the top of column J shows the reduced fee, and this tracks down to the lower part of column E and auto-calculates the reduced fee based on the percentages shown in column C. This reduced number is entered into the budget of your firm management software, and the actual contract amount in column G is entered into the contract amount of your firm management software. Core handles this very well, and we'll do a little poll at the end to give them a little plug. If you meet the target of this reduced fee, then you earned an extra 10% profit, or in this case, an additional $31,000 as seen in column I, line 8. If you met the contract amount, you're still making a profit based on the delta of your bill rate less your cost rate. Hopefully your profit is in the range of 20 to 30% or higher. We'll discuss bill rates and cost rates in a future webinar. Here is where we start to understand the hours associated with the fee as seen in column F. The concept is simple. We establish an average or blended bill rate. The bill rate already includes a set profit. In this example, I'm using 165. It's important for you to understand, very important, that you know what your average bill rate is. In a few slides, we'll see the actual blended rate to cross-check with this information. After this exercise, you'll know this for your firm. I'm not going to review all the numbers, but the concept is simple. We'll use line 12, phase 1 schematic design as an example. The budget amount is $50,400, which is the contract amount of $56,000 less the reduction of 10%, which brings us to $50,400. This is divided by your average bill rate of 165, which comes out to 305 hours or 9 person weeks as shown on column I, which is based on a 35-hour utilized work week. And it's up for you to understand what is your utilized work week. Utilized means the amount of time that's billable versus overhead. And then there's even a difference between realization and utilization that we get into on a different webinar. But you might be at 32 hours, 30 hours, whatever it is, put in your actual utilized work week. This says that one person can work 35 hours a week for 9 weeks to complete this phase. We'll get into team staffing in a few slides, which ties into the actual blended rates as shown in columns G and H. On the far right of the brown box, columns J through O, we establish a schedule. Reminder, once again, only change what's in yellow. Everything else is a formula or text. You'll notice there is not always a correlation between the weeks defined in column H, which represents the fee divided by the average bill rate divided by a 35-hour utilized work week. The weeks shown in yellow in column J are what you are defining as the project schedule, which takes into account client review time, permit review time, and your project staffing. Also note that you just set the start date. The milestones of 25%, 50%, 75%, and the end date are auto-calculated. What's important is to see the 50% milestone is in red. This is the time you as the firm owner or senior project manager needs to perform a review and see if the deliverables are truly 50% complete. There is no software on the market that can tell you are your deliverables 50% complete. That is just a human interpretation. It can tell you that you're 50% done with the budget, but that doesn't tell you are your drawings 50% complete of that phase. I like to do this at 25, 50, and 75%, but the 50% is where you have a real opportunity to right the ship if you're off course. This is the time to reevaluate the project scope or deliverable scope and see if you are over or under delivering. This is the time to ask for an additional service if there is true scope creep, or if something has significantly changed from the original proposal. It's never a good idea to ask for an additional service after you've completed the work for that phase. I like to say check in often and check in early. The weeks and start date are manually entered by you. Some tricks I use here. There can be some overlap in the start and end of each phase. For example, I like to submit for plan check 50% through the CD phase to get the clock ticking while the plans sit at the city. This might or might not be appropriate for all firms or all cities. It's also dependent on your consultant team being able to meet the same schedule. Also, many clients like to go out to bid before the final permit set is issued. In this case, I suggest having the first round of comments received and integrated into the set. As mentioned before, having this spreadsheet as a worksheet to think through your fees, hours, and schedule makes it a lot easier to enter information into your firm or project management software. You can have this on one monitor and your firm software on the other monitor and just transpose the numbers. Now we drop to the last part of the spreadsheet, allocating staff to this specific spreadsheet. The first task is defining your project team. In this example, we're using a 3-person team: principal, senior staff, and junior staff. The spreadsheet allows for a 5-person team that covers most small and medium projects. Just enter 0 in the boxes that are for staff not used. You can hide rows as well if you really just have a 3-person team. Start with entering all the bill rates per your proposal. Then establish the percentages each team member will be working on in each phase. Typically, this varies with the partner more involved in the beginning, and then again, maybe in CA as well. In this example, the concept phase, the partner is allocated 20%, the senior staff is 30%, and the junior staff is 50%. This totals 100 at the top. Follow this through for all the other phases, or enter 0 as shown in the entitlement phase, which may not be used for your specific project. If I change the partner to 30%, the total at the top turns red and shows you've over allocated 110%. The opposite is not true, so make sure you have all these numbers match at 100%. Now the most important part. You'll see a summary at the top that shows the budget amount reduced from the contract amount and the associated weeks that we defined in the schedule. Based on the percentages you entered for each staff member, the spreadsheet will calculate the budget total hours allocated and the average hours per week for this staff member. What this often shows is not one of the 3 staff members can work full-time on this project. For example, in the schematic design phase, which is 8 weeks with a fee of $50,400. Well, this sounds like a lot. If the partner is working 10% of the allocated fee, which comes to 20 hours over 8 weeks or 2.5 hours a week, the senior staff is working 40% of the allocated fee, which comes to 115 hours over 8 weeks or 14 hours a week. And the junior staff is working 50% of the allocated fee, which comes to 168 hours over 8 weeks or 21 hours a week. This means as the firm owner or project manager, you need to manage the time spent on this project. To run a profitable project, you need to manage and allocate time on all your projects, especially the smaller ones. I recommend to discuss the time required in hours with your project managers or senior staff during the proposal writing process to obtain buy-in that this is a realistic time and schedule for this type of project. At the start of each phase, discuss the duration of that phase, such as 8 weeks, and share the hours available and make clear to each team member that they cannot work full-time on this project. Or maybe they work full-time for 1 week, but they only have X number of hours left for the rest. The intention is not to micromanage your team, but to educate, inform, be transparent, and set a realistic goal for how many hours each team member is expected to work. This approach requires a weekly or every 2-week analysis of the time and a gut check if the progress on deliverables for each phase is matching the hours spent for that phase. Some firm management software lets you manually enter a % complete for work or deliverables in a phase, but that's a manual entry. The other approach is creating a detailed task list or work plan for each phase, allocating hours to each task. Most project management software handles as well, but it does take time to learn, manage, and implement, and requires buy-in from all staff members. There is a difference between project profitability and office profitability. Both are necessary for a financially successful firm, which brings up a topic we'll go over with later. What's your definition of a successful firm? It's not always about money or profit. So while this spreadsheet is only a tool and a guideline, producing a great set of deliverables is always the primary goal. Great design, great construction documents, and great construction administration typically leads to a satisfied client and a client referral, which is the most effective and cost-effective marketing value. In addition, creating an office culture where creativity thrives, teamwork is a given, communication is transparent, learning from our mistakes is supported, and by the way, we do great work with happy clients will allow your firm to attract and retain top talent. So, plan your project's budget and fee. define the scope and rough order of magnitude of construction costs, work through a top-down approach, starting with the appropriate fee based on a percentage of construction, work through a bottom-up approach with how many hours you're allocating to each phase based on past data or other information, define the allocation by understanding how many hours are available per phase, per week, per person, based on schedule and team size. And last, make sure the fee structure matches your proposal format and your project setup in your firm management software, such as Core. I know this was a lot of information, so let's open this up to some questions. You can download this spreadsheet on my website. You can send me an email, or you can register on my website if you want to join a best practice group, or if you're interested in private coaching. The best practice groups meet once a month on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. for 90 minutes, where we discuss other issues like this. Some resources for today's material are shown here. If you have any questions, you can reach me at dt@douglasteaker.com. My website, you can see here, is just my name.com. If you would like to join one of my monthly group calls, private coaching, just reach out. If someone on Core wants to put this information in the chat for you to copy and paste, that'd be great. Courtney, we'll move to a poll question before we dive into the Q&A. So I guess I have to stop this to, oh, there's the poll question. Okay, so Core is one of a handful of projects that do a handful of software that does great firm management. If you guys are not using Core, or you're thinking about switching or starting a firm management software, get a demo from a real person. Don't just download the software. These softwares are so powerful, so complex. It really takes someone to show you the potential of what they can do. So if you're not using Core now, get a demo first before you just download it. Understand what the software can do for you. All of these firm management softwares are a heavy lift to implement. Some of the easier ones don't give you the same level of reporting or depth that Core, Deltek, or some of the other ones out there do. So just make sure you're making the right choice for the type of firm that you have. So once again, if you haven't tried Core, get a product demo. If you're using it, put in the chat what you think. Put in some other options for those of you that are not using Core, but are using other firm management software, what you guys like to see. And that's it. We can leave this up. I guess, do I have to vote? Yes, I'd like a product demo. Sure. Oh, hosts and panelists cannot vote. Okay, so I guess at this point, that's up. I can stop sharing and we'll go to Q&A, and I'll turn on my video and come back to join all of you. Hey guys. Okay, now I can see the chat. I wasn't able to see the chat during my presentation.
Hi, Douglas. Thank you so much for that. That was great. We have had quite a few questions coming in. I can see some more are still coming in.
Sure.
We'll get to as many as we can. And if you guys could be so kind as to pop those in the Q&A rather than the chat, it's a little easier to decipher on our end. So one of the first questions that we got pretty early on in the presentation was from Marilyn. She asked, what if you don't know the cost or the construction cost?
Sure. So do research. When I was entering a new project sector, I would contact contractors that have built. If I'm driving around and I see a house that I would love, I'd go in and talk to the contractor. Hey, what are you building this per square foot? They're usually very willing to share what it's costing, but just do your research. There are cost estimators out there that can help you with that. There are some cost estimators that focus on the residential market specifically. Research. Get as many data sets as you can. Hopefully, after a while, you will have built enough homes or projects that are your sector that you'll have a good understanding. But in the beginning, do research.
Great, thank you. Bernard asks, what would be the comments for the consultant fees? This was in regards to one of the spreadsheets that was.
What would be the comments? Can you go back into the chat and give me a little more information? I don't understand the question.
Not sure there. Nina asks, do you break out design renderings as a separate fee, or do you bury that in the design phase?
Once again, I'm not telling you what to do. My preference is that I include screen grabs as part of my design process, but professional rendered with Photoshop are additional service, or not additional service, are an optional service. Once again, as you become aware of your words, you can catch yourself more quickly. They can be an additional service that I do list in the proposal. And, you know, with some of the companies overseas, they can be pretty affordable, but don't give this away. I mean, that because those renderings take a lot of time. But for sure, if you're using Revit with Enscape or ArchiCAD, the ability to create screen grabs is very good. And most of those rendering qualities is enough for the design process. But if you want that beautiful finished rendering that you use on your website, I would offer that as an optional service.
Great. Ronnie asks, can you repeat line 6, arc detailing, and 7, interior arc
Sure.
services?
Sure.
Why
This-
is it not included in the architectural permit set?
Sure. Well, architectural permit set is only what's required to get a permit. This approach is based on creating levels of service that the client can select what level they want. This is only for certain firms and certain type of clients. High-end clients, high-end firms, this does not apply. Just forget about it. But for the firms that are competing with other architects that can produce a very low cost, you might be saying, how can they produce drawings at that cost? Well, they're giving a very, I've seen a lot of set of drawings. Some of them are pretty basic. So the reason I separate that out is so you can compete on a dollar amount when you're competing against firms. Hopefully you're building a relationship with the client. The client sees the value and they're going to be willing to pay for that. Maybe, halfway through the process, they'll say, oh my God, yeah, I really do need that. But you're being very clear up front that a permit set is the minimum amount of work to get a permit. And that's less than you really think. That's very little. I've seen some permit sets that are like 5 pages. That's all they are. You don't need fully detailed. You don't need a ton of building sections, one section. You can get by with a minimum set. So the logic is to allow you to compete with a fee for a permit set, but to educate the client and share your story as to the benefit of having the architectural detailing phase and interior architecture phase to provide more information for the contractor to interpret your ideas, but don't just give it away.
Okay, great. This one's rather long, but I feel like this is a good question.
Sure.
This person asks, how often do you bring a contractor on early on your pre-construction service? Contractor you've worked with, have good experience and history working with, instead of doing the bidding phase post-permit set.
Love this question. And
yeah.
I'm sorry, was there more to it?
There is, but he's basically asking if the client is okay with this approach, would you recommend doing this versus bidding?
100%. And what I like to do is I always like to share with the contractor that, hey, if you're within 10%, if we do go out to bid, I love bringing a contractor in the schematic phase and for the duration of the project. If their number is within 10% of similar types of contractors, and I like to say there are A, B, and C contractors. A is a construction firm that has multiple management levels, in-office project managers, project cost estimators, field supervisors, field superintendents. They're the A. The B is there is an office staff, but it might be 1 or 2 people. The owner might be the superintendent, or they might have some superintendents. And C is the cowboy, works out of the back of the truck, disorganized, paperwork not great, but definitely the low cost. So there are A, B, and C levels. If you bring in an A contractor and the client says, let's go out to bid, you're not going to compare that A-level contractor with a C-level contractor. You have to match apples to apples. And I like to say, we're going to go out to bid at the end. And if you're within 10% or 15%, we're going to go with you because you were here for the duration. Or if the owner is comfortable with that contractor, you don't go out to bid, and that's just going to be what it's going to be.
Okay, perfect. This person asks about consultants. How are the consultants' fees, i.e. geotechnical, structural, calculated for the proposal?
Great question. I like to have them as a separate line item. I never commingle my engineering. I don't lump the engineering fees into the base architectural fee. I have my base architectural fee, if there are additional services, and then my consultant fees. Consultant I'll break down to what you need on the team, civil, structural, mechanical, electrical, et cetera. But I do not commingle the funds. The proposal is net architectural fee, the money you get to keep, you track, and then you track separately your consultant fees. And I do not mix those. I have one client now where they're all commingled, and it's very hard to understand true profitability.
Okay, great. We've had a few people ask the question, what should you do if you're just a one-person firm? Is this approach necessary? Other people are asking if having a software like BQE is necessary. So what are your thoughts on that?
I ran QuickBooks and spreadsheets for the first 10 years of my 30-year practice. It was mind-blowing when I shifted. I was in resistance. I had an admin person that pushed for it. She says, Doug, why are you doing it with spreadsheets? And there's software that can do this. I said, no, I have my system. I got it down and I had a great system. But once I shifted, it was, oh my God, the amount of information available using these firm management software is great. So you don't have to do it. But I was converted after I did it. I was a believer after I switched.
Nice. A few questions on kind of consultants going off of that first one, I think, asking if you mark up the consultants' fees and also do you add like a percentage for
Yeah. So once again, I have a proposal template on my website you can download. I definitely mark up consultant fees because there's a true cost to carrying a consultant. First of all, as a small firm, I would try to have the owners pay the consultant direct. If you are going to put them under your umbrella and pay them out of your account where you bill the client, get the money, pay them, there's a markup for that. The most important one is your errors and omissions, your E&O insurance. They're going to ask how much money was paid to consultants. Your charge, your E&O has a cost for having consultants go through your umbrella. So I would not give that away. It's kind of a deterrent, especially on residential. If you say we charge 15% markup if it runs through us, or no markup if you pay direct, but we still manage and will review their proposals. But it just takes the financial obligation off your plate and the administration of writing those checks and getting money from the client, et cetera. As a small firm, I like to not have them under my umbrella, but if they are under your umbrella, 100% charge a markup on that.
Okay, great. And a few people asking if they would add the percentage and kind of categorize it under administration to process these consultant payments. Would you recommend doing that?
Once again, there's no right or wrong. We did projects for a very high profile hospital and they did not allow us to charge a markup. And the project manager on the hospital site said, Doug, read between the lines, just charge more and count that as your markup. So, there's no right or wrong, however you want to do it to track it, but don't give it away.
Okay, we have 2 more minutes. We'll try to get to a few more.
Sure.
Is there a percentage of overall hours or costs to add as contingency?
I would start with 10% and see, the goal is to hit your target. So whatever that is, that's your goal. If you keep accurate time tracking, you'll see what that number is. Because what I like to do is I like to use the reduced number that already that takes out the 10%. If I can hit that number, I know I'm doing great. If I'm never hitting that number, I know maybe my fee that I'm asking is not enough.
Okay, one more, and then I'll pass it back over to Rebecca to close us out. This person asks, how could this approach be used by a firm who wants to bill hourly for all of their services?
Okay, love it. Brilliant question. Even if you're hourly, set a budget. Okay, even if it's an hourly project, every client has a limit as to what's going to be too much that they're going to pay for. We did a house that was in 1987, $30 million house. The owner, Fortune 165, fired 2 architects before us because none of them gave him a budget. Every high net worth person is going to have a breaking point, and anyone that's not a high net worth person is going to have a breaking point. So even if you're hourly, understand what is your internal target that you're shooting for. What are you trying to communicate? If you break it down to months, at least communicate the time to the client, what you think it's going to be. Be transparent, but even on hourly projects, I put in a dollar amount, and firm management software is going to need a dollar amount to understand profitability. Because if you don't have a contract total and you just have hours associated to a project, it's not going to know what the profitability is.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Douglas, for this informative presentation. We will go ahead and take the questions that are left open and then ask them offline, and then we'll send them in a follow-up email to everyone if that's okay.
Sure.
That way everyone can get their answers. And for all of those who have made it this far, we will go ahead and submit your CE to AIA directly. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you again to BQE. Thank you again to Douglas. We were enthralled with all this information and all the thank yous in the chat. My gosh, I hope you can see
It's
them all.
a fire hose of information. And Tanya, your comments, your comments have been wonderful. Thank you. I'm going through some of them now just to see all the people. Hello to all those people I know.
Definitely. Awesome. Well,
Okay,
we hope
thank you,
that everyone
guys.
has a wonderful day. Thank you
Thank you.
again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.